Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by my buddy. Wherever he goes, I go too. Now let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Larry Air. Fly coach this week, fly the plane next week. Every flight is an adventure when you fly Larry Air. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And we are filmmakers, writers, actors, producer, and we make things, and we like to review films and break them apart, see what we can learn about the process. I like to try and find something to improve my own work anywhere I can, and I would say this show is largely evolved from that compulsion that I have. And then every time, for years we would finish a movie, like walk out of the theater, we would just sit for 20-30 minutes at least and diagnose it to one degree or another. And so I was just like, let's freaking do this and hang out and talk shop. And I just finished a production. We shot 2 days this week shooting a kind of a choose your own adventure VR film. So that, doctors put this thing on and they kind of have this house MD experience of there's a mystery illness and you have to diagnose it and choose what test to run and try to solve it before the time runs out and the patient dies. And for the record, that's when you lose. You don't win if the patient dies. And so it was a thing though. I was telling you before we got on, I have this really bad habit of not sleeping. It's not intended to be part of my process, but unfortunately at this point I still just don't sleep before productions. And so it just sucks because you get 4 hours of sleep and then you go on to set and you need to be sharp and you need to be ready. And that's one of the funny things is, even though I'm still short on sleep, I am not someone who thrives off of 4 hours. I am someone who thrives off of 7 to 8 hours minimum. I don't set alarm clocks every day. I almost, just a handful of times in the year do I set an alarm clock to make sure I get up. And normally when I do that, it's because there's a production, in which case I'm still waking up. My body's making me wake up before the alarm goes off. So we shot a bunch of sunrise stuff before you moved out to San Francisco. And in order to do that, you have to be at the location ready to shoot before the sun starts rising, which means if the sun is rising at, 7, you need to be there, at least by 6:30. And we were getting there at it's a 2-hour drive. And so you're basically waking up at 4 a.m. and I was still waking up at 3:30. But the nice thing about production is once you're on set, there's this vibe, there's this energy, you're creating, you're surrounded by creative people. And I would say the shoot was still a success. The client was happy. Productions are always interesting, especially more narrative driven ones, but almost all of them kind of carry this feeling of you're on a team, you're working together, you're creating. And whenever it wraps, it's like, you've been on this family reunion and now everyone's going back their separate ways. And so there's a little bit of melancholy that sets in as you're wrapping out and loading gear and packing up and saying goodbye. And it's this little bond that you get to have with people that you don't really get in normal projects. I've worked in plenty of offices and there is this little bit of a family vibe that can come out. But it's different. It's just different on set whenever you're, pouring yourself into a project and everyone's doing the same and we're all working together to try to create something to the best of our abilities. And I don't know. Do you still get those vibes whenever you're on set working on something and you're just feeling, you fight a little bit and you make up and things get better and even better. And there's something about that breaking and mending process that makes something stronger. No, and more, and again, very rare. And it's funny, I would say the foul sets I've been on, it starts at the top. And I was having this conversation with one of our clients after we wrapped. A few of us went out to grab a drink and they were just very happy with the vibes on set. And even as we were wrapping out, several people came up to me. I was like, man, this was such a great set, and really positive vibes. And I just really love working with everyone here, because not every set is like that. Some sets, things get foul, and that usually starts at the top for a variety of reasons. For one, how your director and how your producers talk to each other and talk to the people beneath them really sets a tone, and that can upset people. But then even beyond that, you might have really good people that are, head of the project. But what happens is bad scheduling puts pressure on everyone around them. And whenever you start getting short and you're not going to make your day, that can cause a lot of, tension and frustration. And now it becomes this chain reaction of, oh, we're running behind schedule and blah, blah, blah. Now we're going to cut lunch, 15 minutes short so that we can, and it's this big chain reaction. But more what I was talking about was all the other stuff, like the good vibes. It's a very family atmosphere of, we're happy, and, everyone is there because they like doing this kind of work. And it's a very family positive thing. And there is a sense of melancholy as you're wrapping out. That's more of the stuff I was wanting to ask you about, is like, do you get this sense of like, whenever you're on set and you're creating with people, like, man, I love everyone here, and it sucks now that we're kind of going away, and it's like you're seeing family members kind of leave, and that there's this little cocoon that happens on production sets when you're working with people day in and day out, and you're creating really fun things, and you just have this sense of time is standing still, and there's a moment that's flash frozen in everyone's minds, and you kind of paint this picture of everyone that it's going to be there for the rest of your life. And it's nice. It's a rare thing that I've just never experienced that in other types of offices or work environments. It's just a rare thing that I feel like exists in stuff in like a studio making music, or on set, making a film.
Yeah, oh, I see. Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, the only time I ever felt that on a set was doing Threads with you. That felt special. That felt like, and even now when you talk to guys that were on the crew, they still say the same thing. They still, like, when I talk to Andrew, or I talk to any of his guys that joined us, they still say that was one of the best sets we'd ever been on. It felt like we were making something really cool, that was really special, that was fun. And we were there because we wanted to be a part of it. And everybody felt that way. And it went really smooth. And I think a lot of it had to do with everybody was trying to listen to everybody else too, because we didn't know how to make it happen necessarily. Yeah. And it was a very collaborative situation where everybody felt free to make suggestions. They might be used, they might not be, but it was okay. It was okay to say, hey, I know we planned on this shot, but this is really cool over here. Can we just check this out real fast? And we're like, yeah, sure. And because it wasn't so nailed down, it just felt very, very okay to make decisions on the fly, and that makes everything relaxed. So kudos to you on your shoot, because not only did it seem like stuff like that that feeling might have been there, whether or not that happened or not, I don't know, but the feeling might have been there. But also having the client on set, changes everything, because like you said, it comes from the top down, the vibes. And if you have bad vibes from a client who's like very anal and has to have their voice heard, and interrupts you between every take and all that stuff, then it's going to change everything. So you have to please them, but also manage them at the same time, because you're still having to make something, and so that.
And it was
that's
crazy.
Hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, our client was really fantastic. And that's always my big apprehension when a client is on set, because you don't know, who you're about to, get into bed with. Yeah. And the creative process is incredibly intense. And it lends itself to a lot of people thinking they know more than they do, thinking that they can just step in and make calls and know the impact of what those calls will do to the entire project. And right. It's easy to deceive yourself into thinking, I know exactly, what the scene needs, and whatever needs more cowbell. And you just kind of jump into this process, willy nilly. And yet I got a really good vibe from the client. And there was a lot. It wasn't like one person was there. It was a team. And then, we had, I don't know, 7 or 8 people from the client on set. And then they were also streaming through Zoom to a bunch of other people at the office, that were there.
Crazy.
And so it was just this compounded thing that I was like, I don't know how this is going to go, if I'm going to have to pull someone aside and say, hey, you're doing too much, or if it's going to go great. And I just knew whatever was going to happen, it was going to happen, for good or bad. The client was already there, and there was only so much we could do at that point to kind of course correct. And yet the day before the shoot, we did a walkthrough of the set. We were shooting in this big hospital, and the main client. So there's the agency that hired us, the agency that hired the agency that hired us, and then the client that hired the agency.
Oh my God.
And so there's just this crazy long chain of events. And there was another agency that referred us by one of those agencies. And so the chain of custody here is like absurd.
Wow.
And but the client was there, the end game, the one who's actually working for the company that needs this thing. And we had a small moment to ourselves as my producer was kind of walking everyone around. We lingered in this room, and he just turns to me and is like, hey man, I just want you to know I'm here to help you, and whatever you need, you let me know, I'll make it happen. And I'm not here to get in your way. I'm like, that's a great thing to say. We'll see if he means it, because people all the time have the best of intentions and don't follow through. But when it came down to it, that guy was man of his word. He
was from the agency, or he was a client?
He was the client. But ultimately, the buck stopped with him.
Oh, dude.
He was the final voice and everything.
Gotcha.
And so having him there and on my side, there was times when he'd come to me and say, here's a small note. They're pronouncing this word wrong, because this was a lot of medical terminology, easy to butcher. And there was one time he was like, hey, one of our actors was struggling with the line with complex stuff. And he was like, hey, I was thinking we could cut this line of dialogue. And I could see the chain of thoughts that, that impacts. I was like, oh, okay. And then XYZ and XYZ. He's like, yes, you get it. And I was like, is that what you want to do? He's like, this is a tool in your tool belt, use it, don't use it. It's up to you. Do whatever you think is best. Because the problem.
Oh my God.
Right?
Amazing.
Who does that? And
this one guy does that.
That's right. And he had a bunch of compliments after the first day, and it was funny, man, because we're shooting in VR in 360, and so you can't hide a boom in the shots. You have to lob everyone up, and so all of our actors are walking around with hot mics. And I had told my sound op, hey, cut between takes so that I can have conversations with my actors without the client overhearing. And she was like, cool. And she was great. But for whatever reason, that just wasn't happening. And I didn't know until the end of the first day. And the client was like, hey man, I've just been listening to you, and this has been like a master class in directing, because I see how you're talking to this actor. And it's completely different from the way you're talking to that actor and that actor. This one, you're giving all kinds of space. This one, you give short notes. This one, you're a little harder on at times. And I'm just in awe. Like, you're just really treating everyone as their own, kind of person. And I don't think that'll surprise anyone on our show if they've listened to, multiple episodes. I treat everyone as their own person. And you can't just say all actors respond to this. Like, no, some need X and others need Y and Z. Like, it's a process. And so I was glad that, my approach is my approach, because I never went to the actor and said, man, the client's, being, really difficult on the scene or whatever. It's like, no, like, good vibes only. I'm going to my actor and I'm going to help them get what they need in order to do their best. And I've tried to always take that approach, even on Threads. I've never bought into this idea that the captain or the director needs to have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. And I'm never afraid to say when I don't know something, because believe it or not, you whoever's listening to this, you're surrounded by incredibly smart people that know a lot more than you do on a lot of things. And it's okay. And if you give them the opportunity, they will usually step up and help you become better than the sum of your own parts. And so I'm never, even on that set, I was like, there were times I just didn't know the answer to a thing. And someone would come to me with a question. I'd be like, I don't know. What do you think? I honestly have no strong opinion. What you're feeling. And then we would talk it out and the conversation becomes a decision. And the decision ultimately is the best of all worlds. And so I'm big on that. I'm big on just trusting people, I think, with the creative process, because they're there for a reason. They're not there to be a robot. They're there, to partake and participate. And I'm all about that. Yeah. So it was a good shoot.
Dude, that's amazing. Yeah. That is amazing. That's so good to hear. I think that I don't know. I know you're very hard on yourself when it comes to your projects. And so I think this is really good for you to have a shoot that goes so well, and to be put in under pressure and to thrive. I think that you should like lock into that and remember that, for your next shoot. Maybe you'll sleep better.
Yeah, right, that's right.
Bring it around full circle there.
Full circle. And it was great having Scott on, because I don't know how many sets he's been on since Threads. And to me, this is all kind of, second nature stuff. And yeah, he's watching me, and there's, 10 or 15 extras that, are being handled, and a bunch of clients and all kinds of stuff happening around him. And so for him, maybe this was like, oh crap, like Wes is like out here doing it. But I like having people like that on set, like having Scott, having you on set, having my producer Ricky and my intern, and having all these faces that I know. It doesn't feel like a set anymore. It's like I'm hanging out with friends making stuff, whether it's
that's dope
$400,000 budget or everyone's working for free. Like it's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can trust those people.
Yes.
You can trust them.
That's right.
It's like their family,
Huge.
So it sounds like Ricky kicked butt too. I mean, he had probably had to wrangle so much.
Dude, I have so much respect for him, because he has to deal with me throughout this entire process. And I can be hard on Ricky. Like I'm in general,
oh man, poor guy.
Not a very, difficult human being. But ultimately he's my voice. He's my advocate to the client. And so sometimes I do have to send how I'm feeling through him so that he can better understand where I'm at in this process and what I'm upset about and how to make it better. And so sometimes I think I give him a little bit more harder of a time than he deserves, and I can be temperamental with him. Whereas, he's a freaking champ. He goes to bat, and he's working with the client and handling all these meetings I don't want to be a part of. I hate meetings. That's why I left corporate America. I hate micromanagement, and he does an incredible job at giving me my space to create and to do what I'm best at. And so, yeah, huge.
Man.
That guy is big. He's big.
Lucky to have that guy.
Super lucky.
He's awesome.
He's everything I've been needing for, growing in my business for sure.
Yeah. Amazing, man.
Yeah. So
sweet. Yeah. So, with that, we'll just segue into what we're doing 30 minutes later. Today we're going to cover Before Sunrise, Linklater film. So if you haven't watched that, please pause this episode because we are going to spoil a lot.
For sure. We'll touch on a few things. We'll talk about some of the cinematography and directing, some of the benefits of long takes for actors and directing. And we'll also touch on some of the story and writing, three-dimensional characters, keeping the conversation fresh, and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. A young man and woman meet on a train in Europe and wind up spending one evening together in Vienna. Directed by Richard Linklater, written by Richard Linklater and Kim Krizan. It's starring Ethan Hawke as Jesse and Julie Delpy as Celine.
Okay, before I play this clip, I had two options and I couldn't pick. So you can pick 1, 2, A or B, top or bottom, odd or even.
Odd.
Oh, good choice. Good choice. Here we go.
Okay.
I gotta say, I like this Viennese variation of bum.
I like what you said about adding something to your life, no?
Yeah. So, were we having our first fight back there?
No.
Yeah, I think so. I think we were.
Well, even if we were a little bit, you know, why does everyone think conflict is so bad? There's a lot of good things coming out of conflict.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know, you know, I always think if I could just accept the fact that my life was supposed to be difficult, you know, that's what's to be expected, then I might not get so pissed off about it, and I'd just be glad when something nice happened.
Maybe that's why I'm still in school, you know. It's easier to have something to fight against.
Yeah, well, we've all had such competitiveness ingrained in us. You know, I can be doing the most nothing thing. You know, I can be throwing some darts or shooting some pool, and then all of a sudden, I feel it come over me. I have got to win.
Is that what you tried to get me off the train? Competitiveness?
What do you mean? Okay. Good poem. All right.
Will you read it to us?
Sure, okay.
Daydream delusion. Limousine eyelash. Oh, baby, with your pretty face. Drop a tear in my wine glass. Look at those big eyes. See what you mean to me. Sweet cakes and milkshakes. I'm a delusion angel. I'm a fantasy parade. I want you to know what I think. Don't want you to guess anymore. You have no idea where I came from. We have no idea where we're going. Lodged in life, like branches in the river, flowing downstream, caught in the current. I carry you. You'll carry me. That's how it could be. Don't you know me? Don't you know me by now?
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, man.
So, I mean, I have no
Can
idea.
we start with, can I start with a question? Can I start with a question?
Sure,
for
yeah.
you? No, because that was probably my favorite moment in the whole movie for me.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, why do you, because you've seen this probably 100 times, it's like a seminal movie for you. Why do you think I mean, we're not counting any of the other, like, you know, ancillary, offshoot conversations that other people were having. But why do you think that this guy was one of the only actual pieces of dialogue, besides maybe the palm reader, to them in the movie? Why do you think that poem was put in the movie?
That's a good question. I've never actually thought about that. I mean, when he enters the scene, they're in the middle of a fight. Like they're having their first fight. And so I think injecting a moment of like tenderness and poetry is a really great way to kind of keep that fight from evolving and pulling them back into the thing that matters. Like, this is a good moment,
Great point.
you know, to kind of heal that. And I love her comment, like, why does conflict have to be a bad thing? And so even within having that broken up, they're getting perspective on, is conflict even bad? Doesn't it do something like good? And it's funny, like, we playing that clip, I have the movie playing in the background, and that's literally at that scene. And so it was kind of disorienting watching the clip and having the movie be around the same moment. But yeah, did you have a theory on that?
I mean, not fully. One theory would be, because I haven't seen the other two films, but I kind of know what happens, right? And so maybe it's an homage to, not an homage, but like a precursor to like their future, because it's a really beautiful poem, and there's like, but it kind of is all over the place until the end. And in the end, it kind of culminates in this, you know, I'll carry you, you'll carry me. Don't you know me? Don't you know me by now? Which is, it kind of, I don't know. It doesn't really speak to them in that moment to me. It speaks to them in 10 years and 15 years at, you know, after their relationship has like, you know, gone through stuff, has gone through the river, has gone through the rapids, right? Has like, you know, been tested. And, as like a reminder of remember who we were, remember who I am, I'll remember who you are, you'll remember who I am. It felt a little bit like the future, not them right now. I love your point about it being, just as a vehicle to like calm the tension, because there gets to be, for me, there was a lot of tension at moments. There were like moments where I was like, oh man, he's being a dick, like, and she just is fine. She's just like, doesn't ever like really get upset. I mean, even when they're like, quote unquote, not fighting.
Yeah.
They're just not agreeing with each other. There's a very big difference. Huge. You and I don't agree with each other, on several things.
Yeah.
However, we don't fight about those things.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. That's what it felt like to me. It felt like, hey, this is the future you. We're looking into the future, not like right then. If we're looking at the story, but as a vehicle to calm the waters a little bit for the viewer, which I did feel tension there, in that moment.
Yeah.
It worked brilliantly. Thought it was beautiful, because then I'm not thinking about what were they just arguing about or fighting about, quote unquote. I'm thinking about how beautiful that poem was, and they are too. And then they pretty much forgot about what they were fighting about, right? It's just, yeah.
And that's an impressive scene in general, because you have this really long walk and talk, and then that argument breaks out about the palm reader, and we hear the poet suddenly chirps up. And I love that because they stop walking and they separate a little bit, enough to let us see the poet, and we rack focus to the poet. And that takes a lot of timing. That's like a 6 minute, I don't know, or maybe a 3 or 4 minute walk scene. And to time it so that you stop right in front of the perfect camera angle takes a lot of blocking and rehearsing. And the way I would probably approach that is to do it in reverse. Start where you want them to land, and then perform the scene backwards. Now we're going to run the scene. We're going to walk to our starting point.
Brilliant.
And then once you get to your starting point, you have a good idea, like, okay, by the time we finish the scene, we should be in place. And from there, it's just a matter of, good actors are able to do multiple things all at once, right? And you're like, okay, we're on pace. Oh, we're off pace. Let's pause for a second and start walking again. And but they nail it. They nail the blocking on that. It's just really, and the camera op has to be on his game, and carving out a space so that whenever it all starts happening, he's already lined himself up. You can't just suddenly have this big camera move at the end, or it won't feel natural, because this whole thing, right, is a bit of fly on the wall for the viewer. Yeah, it's just a genius whole scene to me.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, and they do a lot of like long shots in general. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because when you said that was part of your notes, I was really interested to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, the longer takes allows a lot of opportunity to give an actor like one-off directions. When you get to this moment in the scene, you pull Ethan Hawke aside and you say, hey, whenever you talk about the monkeys, do this little ooh, ah, ah, on this next take, right? And so now he's in the middle of the scene and he delivers his line, yeah, it's about the monkeys, it's all monkeys, or whatever. And then he does this little gesture, ooh, ah, and then she has to now respond. And she can do that in the moment. And she does acknowledge it, right? She's like, oh, that's good. And she kind of mock imitates him for, a quick beat. And now you can do another take where you don't do that. And maybe you don't do anything. You just run the scene the way that you run the scene. Or maybe even as an actor, you feel this freedom to experiment with stuff. And you don't need to worry about continuity whenever you're doing these really long takes. And then if you're breaking it up with 5 camera angles, right? We're going to get the master. We're going to get the over the shoulder dirty single. We're going to get a clean single. We're going to get a close up. We're going to get an insert. And it just becomes this chess game of, can we make sure it all looks the same when we cut it all together? And now you have a script supervisor who's over on the side making notes and saying, yep, they picked up the glass with their left hand when we got to this line. Like, script supervisors are literally doing that, so that whenever you get, 5 takes in on your 4th angle, and you're like, wait, what hand was I using when I picked up the beer? Now they can just be like, they'll look at their notes, you're left, and you do it, on your second sentence. Okay, good. That becomes so much more complicated and necessary for sure. But if you don't have to do that, if you do these longer takes, it doesn't matter. If you look at the trolley scene, we're in one angle. It's a 6-minute scene, and it's uncut, no alternate angles. And that means you are also free as an actor to trample each other's lines, right? You can jump in a little early or make an extra comment, because now you don't have to worry about getting clean dialogue. It's not about getting a clean line. And you can be messy and human. Like, that's the way people talk. We trample on each other's lines all the time. But you don't do it because, I'm trying to make a good scene. You do it because you're a human in the middle of a conversation. You're trying to send a signal that I want to talk now. I have something to say. And now this person has this verbal cue. And so that's all human stuff in this movie. It's all about kind of capturing these human moments. Same thing with the pinball. And this is a really long scene that I think he picked one take, but he used a 2-camera setup. This is my assumption. Again, I don't know what the hell he's doing in this. But I love, for one, as an actor, you get to perform while playing a game, right? You give the actors something to do, drink or play cards, or in this case, drink and play pinball. And this 2-camera setup allows a fully inhabited scene so that they can react in real time to winning and losing in pinball, right? One person loses and they switch places, and the other's now drinking a beer while watching them play. And you can set your beer wherever you want, based on how you felt positioned in that moment. And you allow reaction shots too, because now you have 2 angles to cut, intercut, and they're both these mediums. And so as they're saying something, you can react, roll your eyes, whatever. And it flows so well. And so I just think doing all this is a really great opportunity to constantly explore and allow a scene to be fresh, because the worst feeling when you're acting is to have to make a decision while you're shooting the master or shooting one of the first takes. And now you find and discover a new wrinkle, on the 3rd camera setup, on your 5th take, and you're like, I'd really like to try this. You no longer have to worry about it. You're just able to constantly experiment and throw stuff at the wall and just be alive, be human, that's the beauty.
I love that. I felt that in this movie all over the place, where they were just talking. And sometimes they'd interrupt each other, and it's like you think of, you also, as a director, you really got to trust your actors too, to like have that, you go all the way to Vienna, and then they just don't have chemistry. No, like they have to have really good chemistry, and not necessarily even that even between each other they do, but in their dialogue, like specifically in their dialogue chemistry, like knowing, I can interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you in a natural way, as opposed to just, because too much interrupting is also very jarring to you as a viewer, right? And then all of a sudden I don't really like this guy a lot because he interrupts her all the time, or, she is, is too laid back because she doesn't interrupt him, whatever. Like it's a give and take that you have to trust the actors to do. I think they do it so well. It
totally is. And the hard and the amazing part as an actor doing these kinds of scenes is you can butcher your lines, and it's okay. If you're a really good actor, you know how to play with that. You know how to still get the intention of what you're trying to say across without having to say every single word in the script. And this is the fun part for me, whenever I direct these VR projects. Like, I can't intercut to a close-up. I can't intercut performances. Everyone's doing one thing, and one scene has to play. It's like doing a theater or stage play. Like when the curtains go up, there are no do-overs, right? You have to be on and in the moment and engaged and willing to make mistakes and live with them. If you're in the middle of a scene and you burp, that burp suddenly has to be a part of your performance. That's part of your character. And that was a choice. That was a thing that is now a part of your reality. And I can imagine that they are just going off script time and time again, getting things wrong or missing a line and or jumping in too early. And they have to stay in it. They have to constantly, and that comes to casting and trusting your actors, and also your actors trusting themselves and trusting each other to believe that, okay, they jumped in early, but they're going to throw it back to me at any point. And that way you're doing it together. You're not fighting for your lines and fighting for your moment. Instead, it's a torch that you constantly pass back and forth between each other. And that takes a lot of, professionalism and understanding and empathy, that you're connecting with your scene partner in a way that, you can feel what they're trying to do next. And they can be in your space, you can be in theirs. That's human. That's uncomfortable. If you're not used to acting and having people touch you, or being comfortable enough to touch someone else, that's a whole thing. And you have to be not only okay with it, but welcoming, and understanding the dynamic of your relationship. I feel really bad for like commercial actors, because at least with Before Sunrise, Ethan and Julie got to spend probably, a few weeks together working through this stuff. On a commercial set though, like you suddenly have to be a family after knowing someone for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And you have to hug and kiss.
Not the easiest.
But there's exercises for that. Some of my favorite exercises are, one of my coaches would have us just hug each other. Like, hey, this is our first day in class together, and I want you to stand across from someone you don't know. Okay, we're going to do an exercise. Walk up to them and hug them, but don't just hug them. This is your friend, your best friend, and you haven't seen them for 3 years. How would you greet that friend? And y'all ready? Action.
Oh my God.
And I remember doing that, and me and this dude,
that's amazing.
I've never seen before or since, we just suddenly, it was like, oh my God, hey, and it just became this huge bear hug. And it's so satisfying, as another human being to feel welcomed by a stranger that way. And so I can imagine exercises that they were going through to be able to accurately imitate the relationship as it evolved throughout the movie. And it takes good directing, good acting, and a lot of trust with everyone. Yeah.
And good writing too. I mean, it would be hard to deliver, all these lines if they were, not real, didn't feel real, or like, do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be, it's hard to deliver crap lines in a really good way.
It is. I imagine, and I don't know this, but I imagine Linklater, and I feel like if I were to actually see the way he works, I would identify a lot with it. Whenever I write a script, I try to tell my actors, throw it all away. You know what I'm trying to say here. If you want to use completely different words, I don't care. This isn't about me. This isn't about my ego. It's about finding what's natural and works for you, and do that. If you want to choose a different word or a completely different sentence, I literally don't care. What I care is that it feels natural coming out of your mouth, and that it feels lived in, this whole reality. So I can imagine they're having those conversations here, because it does. Everything they're saying to each other feels completely real and organic to their personalities and the way they see the world. Like, it all feels. And I think part of that too is he didn't write it by himself. I know Linklater does a lot of his own writing, but he worked with Kim Krizan, and I think these are the only movies she's written. Like, and I don't know why he picked her, or if this was her idea and she approached him. I don't know how all that worked out, but it seems important, not just because, you have two writers that can now talk and stage the conversation and create these flows and these ebbs, that create a vibe, but it also is a man and a woman. And having her perspective, I'm sure at times, was critical. There's that scene on the trolley when he asks her, like, what drives you crazy? Like, what really, annoys the hell out of you? And she's like, and this is like in the early 90s. And she's like, when a random man on the street tells me to smile,
yeah.
Or whenever I'm in America, and Americans are the worst at this, whenever I get upset, and I'm really like frustrated about something, they're like, oh, you're so French, you're so cute. These are like very specific things that are probably endemic to the woman's experience especially at that point, and probably still for a lot of women, an endemic experience to being a woman. And so having that perspective probably added a lot of texture to her in particular, in the way she sees the world and the way she approaches handling, Jesse. Yeah.
Totally agree, man. Yeah, it was really,
Please.
it felt really natural and very, very real. Yeah, I know you're asking me what I thought about it. I thought, yeah.
It's
So
okay if you
I
didn't
mean,
like it. If it was just meh, it was fine. I don't care.
I
You
know.
know me. It's your thing.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I will say this. I will say this. If this would have been made now, I wouldn't like it. I because it's early '90s, early to mid '90s. I know it's ageless. It doesn't feel very old. They don't show enough or do enough for it to feel old.
Yeah.
They're just two people talking, and that could have been 70 years old, or it could be made yesterday. So I will say that it has aged really well, I think. But I don't know. I felt very annoyed by his character at times. I felt like he was just like hamming it so hard. But and then she received it really well. So like she was obviously into him because, there were things I feel like that he said or did where, I don't know, most of the women I know would be like, what the heck is wrong with you? But I thought that a lot of it was really organic conversation, and it just kind of flowed really well. Like really beautiful writing. The acting was fantastic. I wouldn't necessarily like want to watch it again, but it was good. It was very good for what it was, I think. I just didn't fully identify with either character, so that's why it's not like amazing for me personally. But I don't think that that's of any fault of anybody. You know what I mean? I think this is a movie that is specific to someone, interested in seeing that, or interested in seeing the play of two actors. Like if I watch it from a critical standpoint, I love it. I absolutely love it. But how I like to watch movies. I don't like to watch them from a critical standpoint. I don't like to watch them from a how did they make this standpoint. But the whole time I was, and I couldn't not. I was like, oh, and that's a real testament to the directing, to the acting, to the writing. I mean, honestly, to the camera work, to all of it. I saw it, which normally is not a good thing, but I think in a case of this film, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching, oh my gosh, this take has been going on forever, and they're just going and going. Did they memorize these lines, or were they just really, was it banter? Was it just leave the camera running and see where this goes? And this was only supposed to be a minute and a half long, and now it's 6 minutes long. Like, that kind of stuff is really cool, and that's what made this movie interesting to me. If there would have not been those long takes, or if they would have stayed in one place instead of like moved around, it would have fallen flat for me. But I felt like they made the most of the city. They made it without me feeling the city. They made me feel the city. Like you didn't have any of these drone shots that you have now. You didn't have any of these like grand, wide angle shots. I mean, you had some wides, but they were of like they were of, say, a club or a bar as they walked past it out front. That's it. And they're walking to you, so all of a sudden the wide becomes a medium, becomes a close-up. So they were all purpose-driven. So I felt the city because they did a lot of stuff, but I didn't feel like it was like, I always felt them, right? So I loved the cinematography and the acting and everything. And I loved the concept. I mean, I've met people in my life that I've felt a real connection to for just a day, or a couple of days, and that I've never seen since. And I don't mean that way in the biblical sense. I mean just like in life. And yeah, I mean, when I look back on it, it's not heartbreaking, but at the time it was heartbreaking to leave them. And so at the end, but I am very glad that at the end they did go away. He didn't stay there, or she didn't come with him. It was just, this is a story about one night before sunrise. And that was it. They didn't try to tell anything deeper, and there could have not been a second or a third, and that would have just been it.
Yeah.
I love that. I think it's beautiful, and I think it was really well done. I think the sex scene on the grass was really well done too, where he asked her, but he didn't pressure her, and he let her make the decision, and he was okay with the decision being no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that I think that's very. I mean, in films, especially back then, it's not always the case. You know, there's a lot of pressure and everything, and so and then they cut away, I think, at a good time, and you know, for it to just be their moment, you know, and we just kind of like live with them afterwards. I thought I did feel like the next morning. You know, the first time we see them the next morning, they're walking around that corner, and then they hear the guy playing. As they're walking towards it, and you hear the music as they're walking around the corner, I felt like, okay, this is the walk of shame, and they're both doing it together, and it's a little quiet and awkward. But then the music breaks the awkwardness. But it was amazing that I felt that awkwardness before they even said a word. I felt it as a viewer, you know. But then he notices the music, and then they walk over, and it's broken. You know, the awkwardness is broken. Yeah, I thought it was very, very beautiful. I don't know. I could go on for a long time. I thought it was very beautiful. I'm excited to see the next one, to be honest.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I saw this through most of my childhood. I did not have like access to cable. Like there was no, you know, TV that I really got to watch. Most of what I watched was movies, but there were a couple brief periods where I did have like cable or satellite, and we had HBO. And this random day, I turned on HBO, and this movie was starting, and I just sat and watched it. I was probably 14, and it blew my mind. Like I kept waiting to some degree of what's going to happen. And then somewhere around the halfway mark, I was like, oh, that's what this movie is. It's just two people talking and getting to know each other. It's very anti-traditional filmmaking, right? Where there's no conflict. There's even in most of the scenes, there's no conflict. Like one of the most basic tenets to a lot of writers is every scene must have conflict. And in this scene, almost no scene has conflict. In fact, you might even say that the only scene with conflict is the opening scene, and they leave it, right? It opens on two people arguing in German or something. And it ultimately chases both of them out of the boxcar. And so they leave conflict behind. And I don't know if that was an intentional message that Linklater was trying to send. But if not, it's still like a really brilliant, you know, accidental touch to say that this movie is leaving behind conflict, and instead we're embracing something else. Two people, you know, come together and for good things, good vibes. And yeah. And so watching this movie as a kid, I had no idea a movie could be that. I didn't see Slacker, and that I feel like this is a graduating of his first picture called Slacker that just kind of won everyone over. And then I think from there he made Dazed and Confused. He either made that next or this next, I forget. But he was a busy filmmaker. And so watching this, I was just like, what? Because as a kid, I always loved dramas. I loved everything. I watched a lot of movies, but like Stand By Me was a lot of conversation in there, but there was still a lot of plot involved in Stand By Me. And there's none. It's just, you know, romance and conversation and philosophy, thoughts about life, and death and everything in between. It was just,
I think that Linklater does that really well. Yeah. He does that in a lot of his films. Yeah. Really, really well. Yeah. Very natural.
Very natural. And it's as a writer, I'm like, man, that's not fair. Like, how does he do that?
Yeah.
But I love it. Yeah. So even though I you know, probably didn't see it again for years, that one time watching it, you know, as a young man, just left its print, you know, on me. And one of the probably two or three most foundational movies in my, you know, childhood. Yeah. So,
Dude, I could see that. I could see that as a young, an adolescent, right? A young teenager seeing that.
especially in that era, because it was all
Yeah.
action films and, tear-jerking dramas. Like there wasn't a ton of in between. And then to have this movie that's none of that. It's like, you know what? We're just going to hang out and walk around
Yeah.
and talk.
You know, I was when I watched it the other night, I was next to Jenny and she was dozing, and I said, "You want to watch this with me?" She said, "Sure, I'll watch it a little bit." I said, "Have you seen it?" She said, "Yeah, it's like a seminal chick flick." And I was like, "Oh, really? Oh." And then I watched it and I thought, it's not a chick flick at all.
It's not a chick flick.
Like, no, a chick flick I think is stuff like, Sleepless in Seattle and
Yeah.
I don't know, stuff that typically wouldn't happen.
Right. Agreed.
But why wouldn't this happen?
Yeah.
People meet other people all the time. Maybe they just don't have good enough conversation for them to get off the train for them. But yeah, that stuff happens all the time. So I don't know. I didn't see it quite as that, but I went into it with a little bit of hesitancy
Right.
because she said that. But so I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't. And so let me clarify also, when I say that I'm not excited, I wouldn't be excited to watch it again, doesn't mean that I wouldn't. And I probably will, but with different eyes, with just a not the filmmaking eyes, just the story eyes. And I'll try to, I would like to actually watch it with that 14-year-old boy eyes, because I think you and I probably were very similar in a way growing up. Like we were very love struck and just, I don't know how to put it, but
the hopeless romantic.
Thank you. I was looking for it. Yeah, a hopeless romantic type. I definitely was. I mean, I still am to a degree, but definitely back then. And seeing something like that would have really been amazing, I think, for me as a 14, 15-year-old.
For sure. But obviously, you know what I mean when I said last week, like this is a movie of one thing, and either you're really on board with that thing or you're not. And it's hard to find a tweener. And you did. I feel like you did find kind of an in-between phase because the filmmaking is pretty brilliant, even if you're not fully engaged with both characters. And I know what you mean. Like Jesse can be a bit of an ass, and that's part of his charm for Celine, even if not part of the charm for the viewer.
No, the other thing too is that it was good. I wouldn't have wanted him to be any different because I think that a lot of people, I think it's very natural for someone who is like he is to just say things because you don't want there to be silence.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that, except in some moments, I think he's probably very much that way. I think, there were some silent moments, but for the most part, he just kept talking, kept asking her questions. And that nervousness of, I don't want her to feel like she has to give too much. I want to give. I want to bring her to me. I want to, by asking her questions, by giving her a piece of information from me, by pushing this whatever this is, this date or this the conversation farther. I think that's very much his character, and I think that Ethan Hawke is brilliant in so many ways, and he's a brilliant actor, just period. But in this case, I think he completely shines. He's just wonderful.
It's crazy
in that character.
I mean, I've been watching him my entire life. Like I grew up, like Explorers was a big movie as a kid, and he was like the lead in this child's sci-fi movie. And there's just not a lot of child sci-fi films that have a texture of grounded and drama to it. And so sometimes I forget that I've been watching this dude like in a lot of my favorite movies, since I was a child. Like it's kind of wild. But I agree, he is a brilliant actor.
Forever.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know a bad movie. I'm sure that everybody's had a bad movie,
one, yeah.
but I can't tell you a bad one he's been in, or at least that he's been bad in.
Right.
I'll say that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already halfway through all my notes actually, so I'll just touch on the rest of the cinematography and directing stuff. There's a fun first shot, last shot that they do, because the first shot is a POV of the train on the train track. We're just kind of rolling over the tracks. And the last shot is Celine on the train. She's kind of falling asleep and remembering her day and smiling to herself. And it just feels like a continuation of the first track, of the first shot, that she's back on track. There was everything in between those two shots was an interruption that was unscheduled. And so I think there's a very simple, first frame, last frame that he did. And then towards the end there, they separate, right? She goes to her seat and he goes down the escalator and gets on his bus. And that is kind of painful. Seeing them apart is suddenly melancholy. And it's reflected in the stillness of viewing everywhere they'd been. But it is, after seeing them together so long, a little painful to see them apart again. That's kind of an interesting little feeling that he's imparting on everyone. Some scenes, I mean, camera work wise or cinematography wise, a little all over the place in a good way. Some scenes are one angle. Some, like the Charlie shot, like we mentioned earlier, is a medium 2 shot. And a 2 shot just means there's 2 people in the shot. And sometimes they walk through a scene, like you were talking about outside that, I think the dancing, they walk through that whole scene, and then we catch a portion as the conversation comes to us, and then they walk away. And we're just kind of catching a snippet of their conversation as it happens. And some shots are like tracking shots from in front, intercutting with a tracking shot from behind them. And those are really fun sequences because it allows a coverage of, now we have 2 different takes to intercut between. And it also makes sure that the scene becomes a fully realized 360 degree scene. And it's immersive in that way. We feel like they are really just out in the street doing their own thing. And some of the lighting is interesting in there because I'm like, maybe they're using some lanterns, like maybe they have a China lantern that they're Hollywooding, and Hollywooding is a term that you're just holding it. And so if you're on a set and someone says, hey, can you Hollywood that bounce? It means grab the bounce and just use your hands to hold it. And sometimes whenever you're tracking a shot, right, if we're backpedaling as we're tracking them from the front, there's not a lot of light on their faces whenever you're dipping in and out of shadows. And so sometimes you'll have, I don't know which department would be, maybe the grip department is holding a lantern on a boomstick. And that way you get at least a minimum amount of illumination on their faces so that you can really make good eye contact with them. And you're just holding that while walking through. But then there's also a lot of color shifting that happens in this scene that I'm thinking about. And so I'm like, I don't think they had color shifting lanterns back then. And so maybe instead they installed all these huge lights out of frame on top of the building somewhere. I don't know. Watching these scenes, I was like, this is some masterclass stuff, because I doubt they just were able to use the available light. I don't see how that would be possible shooting on film stock that they probably had access to back then. And it's very clean. Like, it doesn't look underlit at all. And so I would love to be a fly on the wall, or maybe just dig up some BTS pictures and see what they were doing. And then sometimes there's these 2 camera setups, right, that allow the actors to, interact and inhabit the scene almost the exact same as you would a oneer. And that's where earlier I was talking about, like the pinball scene, etc. It's like you can, even though it's a 2 camera setup, you can treat it like a oneer in the sense that we're only going to choose one take and we're just going to use that take. And so now we just have a choice between cutting from this angle to this angle. And that's freaking cool to me. And Linklater in general, I love him because I like shooting. I like to be set up quickly and then just get to this shooting. And now let's create. And I can imagine either one of 2 things or one of multiple things. For one, Linklater doesn't seem to major in the minors. Like, he doesn't seem too concerned about the perfect lighting and the perfect cinematography as so much as let's create a reality and make us feel like we're in that reality, and spend more time on the performances and making it all feel genuine instead of some hyper slick, cinematography thing that would make you think more about the production side. Instead, let's think more about the human side. And I'm not going to spend 3 hours getting the light just right. Instead, we're going to set it up once and be nimble to bring in a reflector or whatever as we cut in the coverage. And that way we can stay in the moment, stay tuned in to what you're feeling in between these setups. I imagine that's kind of what he leans towards. At least that's the way it feels when I'm watching this stuff. And that's definitely my style of filmmaking. Let's get in there. Let's create. Let's stay connected emotionally with what we're feeling in this scene. As far as story and writing, three-dimensional characters. Like, these are all 3D people. These two people are three-dimensional. Jesse, he's a little cynical, right? But also a little idealist, very romantic. And he's very much a contrarian that can't really hold his tongue. If he doesn't like something, he just has to say it, or it's going to eat him alive. He just has to say it. And he's going to do his best to make it like endearing, but at the same time, you know exactly how he feels about it, even if he's trying to poorly coat it with some syrup, like the palm reader, right? Palm reader walks away and he's like, what an opportunist, right? He just kind of rags on her. Same thing. And then there's this moment in the church where he tells a story about Quaker weddings, right? And it's this beautiful moment. And then he immediately chases that with a story about his friend teasing a homeless man with $100 bill. Like, it's hilarious. And like, damn, bro, you just couldn't let that beautiful moment sit.
Yeah. What? I remember thinking, like, why? Why did you say that?
Because
I think
it's head, right?
I think and if you're just thinking from a story, I mean, again, I keep coming at this with like the filmmaking or the story aspect of it, and it's like, the whole point of this is to have two people be so open about exactly what they think and what they feel, so that nothing is left. Everything is left on the table. Nothing is left not being said, right? That's the whole point. If I, as a viewer, I want to see that happen, to know that exists and that's okay, because probably I'm not that way.
Yeah.
When I meet somebody, I'm not going to be like this.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep skeletons in my closet, and I'll let you see them later. Instead, I'm going to give you everything, exactly who I am, and tell you some stupid thing right after telling you some beautiful thing, because why not?
Because why not?
Because that's who I am as a character, as a person, right?
Yes, and that's him to a T. And it's nice to take advantage of those things to flesh it all out, because you're right. I mean, it's just not as interesting if he holds that stuff back, and it's a better viewing experience for sure. And to see people's flaws, it's nice, because if you don't do those things, he can start to look a little too perfect. It's like, oh, you just wrote the perfect guy. Well, let's give him some bumps and bruises and realize him as a human being. And then even with the poet, right? They walk away from the poet, and he assumes the poet probably used a template for his quote unquote inspired poem. He's like, he just probably plugs that word in. It's like, damn, man. Like, it's interesting. And he tells like this breakup story, right? And this is him and how he views the world, and also how he's viewing himself right now. Because this is a moment at the pinball machine, and he's realizing how little his ex is thinking about him right now. And it's because of how he realizes he thought so little of the people he'd broken up with. It's relief. It's not agony. It's like, thank God that person's out of my life. And he's like, man, that's what really sucks, is realizing she's just grateful that I'm gone and that she isn't experiencing pain. And that sucks. And it's bittersweet. I mean, it's very honest. And I like that, because it's not just him being cynical about the rest of the world. He's also cynical about himself. Like, he's not thinking of himself as some special case in some special scenario. he's applying that same lens to himself as well. And I think that's cool for him to have this kind of bittersweet reality check about what people are thinking about him as well. That's pretty cool.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And then Celine, right? She's a little bit of a realist, a little bit of an optimist, also clearly very romantic. And I think more or less that's most people. Most people are pretty romantic. And I love the way she contrasts, though, because her optimism really goes against his cynicism very, beautifully, right? The palm reader to her was just fun encouragement. She wasn't going to live her life based on that stuff. But to her, it's something that, gives you another view on life and, creates a fun memory and an encouraging way and direction to kind of tread. To her, it's not opportunism. It's like we're all doing something together. Same thing with the poet, right? She just enjoys the poem. She takes it at face value. And that's a great way to live life, to not assume alternate intentions on the people around you. And what's really cool about that with her character is that it reveals why she was willing to trust him in the first place and get off the train. That's the same kind of person that believes that the poem the poem was written for them, that is willing to trust and listen to a palm reader. That's the same person that says, yeah, you know what, I'll trust you enough to get off this train and walk around with you, stranger. Like that's a fully realized character that's inhabiting every one of her decisions, and everything that she's saying is all a part of that same kind of a reality that she's living in. It's perfect.
Yeah. She's much more developed and together than he is. He's searching the entire movie. He's just constantly insecure, which I think is why it speaks to you and me. He's being around her. That's why he just talks all the time, and he asks her questions all the time, and she's just taking it. I mean, she gives back, like when he's asked her questions and stuff, she'll then ask him questions and give back and give real answers. In fact, she gives the first real answers, and when he asks her about her first sexual desire, and she gives a real answer, and then he just won't.
He dodges.
He dodges, and she's like, "Wait a minute, whoa! I just told you something very personal. Come on." So yeah, very good point. She's much more developed than he is, and I think he gets better as the movie goes on, for sure. And she helps develop him, and that's maybe what they give each other. She helps him realize a little bit more about himself, and he helps confirm a little bit more about her. And that might be, part of that give and take, right? Where, from the poem, we circle back where it says, "I'll carry you, you carry me." That very much felt like that, throughout the film.
Nicely said. Last couple notes. I like all the music breaks. Like, there's just periodic, brief little ways to break up all the conversation. And like the record store, we kind of hang out with them in the booth as they're nervously glancing at each other when they're not looking. There's the moment when they walk into the club and there's a guitarist on stage playing a track. There's some montages here and there. There's a very brief moment on the riverboat where this band kind of breaks out and is playing like a love song to some couple that look like they're celebrating like an anniversary or something. And then there's the harpsichord player at the end that you talked about. And those are just really nice ways to break up the scenes. And it's kind of a reset of our attention. Without those moments, this movie becomes really one big monologue. And it can be hard to digest. But if you break it up, like you said, with the music, but also with the scenes, like we're not just going to stay in one place one time. That's kind of my problem with Dinner with Andre. Like, there's a really great conversation that they're having, and I've seen it twice. I've fallen asleep twice, and it's just brutal because they're in one place the entire movie. And here they find a great way of, like, we're going to keep it fresh by giving you something visually different to look at. And we're going to keep the cinematography fresh. They just found really smart, simple ways to keep the viewer engaged. They also don't wear out their welcome. This is, a 90-minute film, and they make good use of it for being what it is, which is just conversation. It's also interesting that there's no loops. This isn't about a plot, right, with setups and payoffs. It's about the journey, not the destination, because literally this movie is destinationless, right? She never got to where she was going. He never got to where he was going. This is just an interruption in their journey. And it's perfect. Those are the best moments in life. For instance, they make a comment about, we didn't go to the play, the cow play, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that's just not going to that play is a microcosm of the entire movie, right? They made a plan that they did not fulfill. She was on a trip she did not complete, etc. And yeah, I love it for that. Yeah,
dude, it's so funny that you said that, because that made me feel good. I can't even tell you, I couldn't tell you why but for them to, I remember thinking, watching it, okay, when are they going to get to the cow, play? And, the night went on, it got dark, and I was like, guys, it's probably getting late. You got to go to the cow play. And, then they're laying on the grass, and I'm like, guys, what are you doing? The cow play. And the whole time, and then even the next morning, I see him walking around. I'm like, guys, you missed the cow play. And it just spoke volumes to me about me, not about them,
Yeah.
But it's a good point, because it's all it's encapsulated in the film of like not getting to a destination, and even having one aside from your actual destination, and you still fail at that. It actually made me feel better as a person, of like, you don't have to do everything. You can just walk around. You can just talk and not have, missions in life all the time. I don't know. It made me feel good that, like, these people who are supposed to be real people having this one night together made the decision to not go do this thing that they were invited to do. It was actually a really wonderful feeling. Now that you bring that up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember feeling like this is actually really, really good. I'm really glad they didn't go.
So questions for you. These are, I don't know, whatever. Have you ever had your palm read?
Yes. Oh my God. I did. And I'm trying to remember it now, because I was in high school. I was in Houston. What did she say? She said I would have a long life.
Huh.
I want to say that she said I'd have 2 kids, but and not with the girl I was with.
Oh, damn.
But I can't fully remember. Oh my gosh. And now I'm going to really want to go back and think about that. But yeah, something like that.
Nice.
Yeah. So she was pretty spot on, at least so far, if that was correct. You?
Yeah, once I was on a date. We were hanging out at, the snack bar, and palm reader was walking by giving palm readings, and she was like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, all right. Completely off. I don't remember what he said, but it couldn't have been more wrong. And I remember feeling exactly like Jesse, because she was kind of eating it up, and I didn't like rain on her parade or anything. But I was just like, yeah, that maybe he's still a baby palm reader, and he's working on his craft.
Awesome.
Have you ever paid for street art? Like, they get the poem, but I don't know. Have you ever paid for like someone to play a song, or a busker, or bought a painting, or
an artist? Yeah. Like a caricature artist. Yeah. In San Antonio.
Nice.
I have. And in LA, actually, on the Strip. Mm-hmm.
Nice. I paid, I was in Mexico, and there was a band playing, some songs outside of a bar. And I was one of my favorite songs is Interstate Love Song, Stone Temple Pilots. And that intro is like my favorite intro of all time. It's just this little beautiful guitar riff that leads into this drum, fill that starts the song off. And I just really wanted to hear it. And so I was like, hey, can y'all play Interstate Love Song? And this was recently. This wasn't like, 1998 or something. And so for a band in Mexico to randomly pull Stone Temple Pilots out of their hat.
That's impressive.
Freaking impressive, man. And they nailed it. Like, they really killed it.
Oh, cool.
I think I even have video of that somewhere.
In the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes if I can find it. Have you backpacked in a foreign country?
No. I never did it. I wanted to, but I never had the money to get over there or the means. And then when I did have the money, I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
I should have.
Huh.
I should have.
Interesting. Yeah.
I know you have.
A lot. Yeah. I mean, one of my first trips, I took a one-way flight into Mexico City with a buddy, and we just kind of made our way back to Austin over the, 3 or 4 weeks. It was incredible. And since then I've been chasing that, dragon. It's just, I've backpacked through Mexico several times and through the Dominican Republic and Central America. And every time is its own unique thing. And every time it's been amazing. Yeah. I don't know, maybe someday I'll beg Jenny to let you out of the house and we can just, I don't know, take a trip somewhere, man.
Oh my God. Just that would be
pack around for
incredible.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah,
good luck.
That's
all
right.
I guess.
That's right.
That's all I gotta say.
Do they see each other in 6 months? When 6 months later, on whatever December 16th, do they both show up to the train station?
Yes, they do.
Interesting. And you already said you think they have sex there in the park.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, she says that she wants to. Do you not?
Do you not want to see me again? It's such a great moment. I love that.
Yeah,
nice.
I know.
Cool. Well, I think that's all I got. So
has anything like this happened to you?
Oh yeah, a number of times. There was this one time right out of high school. I'd moved to Austin. I was still homesick, and it was really random. I had some family in town, and I ran some clothes to the dry cleaner, and then I ended up staying and hanging out with the dry cleaner girl for like 5 or 6 hours, just hanging out with her. And it was one of those little microcosms of little worlds that we built. And I've had that happen on trips where, I go in Mexico and you meet someone and you hang out, for 1 or 2 days. Same thing in Dominican Republic. Met someone out there, and you hang out for a few days, and it's beautiful every time. You just meeting people, and it's not always just women that I'm interested in, but I also meet dudes, and we hang out, and they show up. When we were in, that was Dominican Republic. We took a bus, me and my 2 buddies, Shamari and DP. We were sitting in a bus station and eating. And then we looked up, and there's a sign in this little waiting area that's like, no food or drink. And we see it, and it's only written in Spanish. And we're like, we'll just say we don't speak Spanish. And this dude starts laughing, and we're like, oh crap. You speak English? He's like, yeah. We just start talking, and after we get off the bus to our next destination, he's like, where y'all going? Y'all know where y'all are staying? We're like, no, we're about to find a place. He's like, come meet my mom, and I'll find a good spot for y'all to post up for a few days. And so we went, hung out, went to his mom's place. I think she cooked for us, and then he went and helped us find a place, and then we went and hung out some more. And it just becomes I think that's the part that pains me is if you've never traveled abroad, if you've never experienced other cultures, the world looks much scarier than it actually is. It's full of just beautiful people, just like you, I think anybody listening to this, if you met a stranger in your town and you would treat them with so much courtesy and like show them around, like, oh, have you been here? Yeah, let's go. And if there's good vibes there, like you're going to do that stuff. It's the same way the world over, maybe even more so, because all these other cultures are less interested in the bullshit. And it's all about like family, and it's all about, being good to each other. And I do think Americans, despite our reputation, are very good at that. The number of times I've seen people who are heavily on one side of the aisle or the other pull over to help someone that doesn't look anything like them, that they should, for every political reason, not like them. Whatever, you need a ride, you need help changing that tire. People are so good to each other, and I think that gets lost in all the noise. Yeah. Anyway.
Great point. Yeah. I mean, I really want you to talk to my wife. Maybe we can get out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've been to Europe, I've just never been backpacking by myself.
Just right. Yeah. Nice. Well, what are you going to recommend this week? Oh.
Okay. A buddy of mine from work turned me on to this, and I watched it and just loved it. And apparently it got greenlit for season 2. It's on Hulu. Only Murders in the Building. Martin Short and Steve Martin and Selena Gomez. And I just loved it, man. Just seeing those two guys together.
Yeah.
And Steve Martin, I believe he wrote it. I know it's his show. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure he and one other lady wrote it. And it's just really smart. It's really funny and witty. And they develop the characters really in an interesting way where you find stuff out throughout. And it's just a smart premise, and it's a lot of fun. And the title sequence is amazing.
Yeah.
And the music with it is just so good. It's an animated title sequence. It's so stinking good. And it's just fun. It's not like it's like brilliant. Mm-hmm. It's just fun to see those two guys interacting together, on their A game for sure. Just like, I can't tell you the last Steve Martin thing I watched where I was like, oh, this is awesome. I can't really tell you that. Yeah. Martin Short has always been up there for me. Yeah. He's just never misses, but them two together. And there's even a point in the show where I think Martin Short says something like, hey, we make a good team, don't we? Something where he's just like this homage to everything that they've ever done together. And it's just wonderful. So I could not recommend it enough. And it's streaming on Hulu.
What a good recommendation. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I love just seeing them on screen together again, like you said. But the thing that really surprised me was how much I liked Selena Gomez.
100%.
A part of their, like, she is incredible. Like, I am so excited to see her more in all projects, but certainly that odd pairing of her with them, I never would have guessed in a million years.
Me either. And when I told my buddy, he said, yeah, I'm not really sold on her. I was like, really? Because she like brought it for me. I loved her in it. So
yeah, anyway. She was fantastic. Nice. I'm going to recommend another little movie about two people coming together, much more dramatic. It's called Like Crazy. It's Anton Yelchin and Felicity Jones, and they're both absolutely entrancing. If you want something else that has, kind of a bittersweet romance to it, then I think you'll really enjoy that. That's another director that I just really love, Drake Doremus. I doubt that's how you pronounce that, but he just has his own kind of style that's all about being organic and writing with intention more than words. And so,
cool.
Like Crazy, check that out. And
love it.
Stay tuned for, actually, we have a short spotlight this week. Check the show notes. It's an interview. I think it's one of our listeners, Deanna Evangelia, who worked on this project that's interviewing this 84-year-old woman. I forgot to make all the notes about it, but it's an interview. It's like this 15-minute interview of this woman who's an absolute badass, and she talks about her life and being, I think she's gender nonconforming, and it's a really incredible interview, and I'm saying she, and I don't know if that's the proper pronoun or not. There's absolutely no disrespect intended. But she's, a beautiful person, beautiful story, talks about being married despite not really wanting to be married to a man, and just being a sign of the times. And it's a really profound, incredible story, wonderfully shot. It has a great message of body positivity in it. Like it's really excellent. So I highly recommend everyone check it out. We'll embed it in the show notes. And bravo to everyone involved on that worked on that. I think it's Style Like You is the name of the channel, and it's not YOU, it's you, Style Like the letter U. So yeah, check that out, and
wow.
I promise it'll be worth it. And also stay tuned for next week. We are going to continue the saga of Jesse and Celine. Maybe we'll see what happens with Before Sunset, and so we'll be checking that out next week. And don't forget, subscribe and review. If you're enjoying the show, leave us a note. Let us know if you want us to cover something. And if you want to drop a note on this episode in particular, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/Before Sunrise.
And we'll leave you with a quote of the day from Rick Steves. Travel is rich with learning opportunities, and the ultimate souvenir is a broader perspective. I think that's such a great line, a great piece of truth there. I mean, I thought one way, and then I moved away from home, and now I think a different way, or I think a broader way. How about that?
Yeah,
I think it's really, really well said. Yeah,
totally. And Rick Steves is like a famous travel writer and filmmaker. He has tons of books on tons of countries. He's just a really fascinating person. And I love that idea that the ultimate souvenir is a broader perspective. Like I've never regretted spending money to go traveling. And there's been times when I really couldn't afford it and I was already committed and I just stayed committed. Like going to New Zealand a couple years ago to visit Joe and Heather. Like I really didn't have money at that point, but I'd already in my mind committed to doing it. And at the time the ticket I think was like $1,200 or something like that. And I was like, this is a lot of money and I don't know how I'm gonna make it work. And eventually, of course, it all worked out. But I've never once regretted spending money to travel anywhere. I've regretted spending money on some video equipment. I've regretted spending money on lots of other practical things. But even fixing my car, sometimes I'm like, I shouldn't have spent that money. That did not fix what I thought was wrong. And
yeah.
But I've never once regretted money spent on traveling, and it's an enriching experience, and builds ultimately the only thing that I think matters in life. One of the most important things, anyway, which is memories and experience. Yeah.
100%. And we're a culmination of our experiences. So
Yes.
Totally. I love that quote. Fantastic.
Nice.
Man, this has been great. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did. Thank you for sticking with us. Make sure to join us next week. We'll be covering Before Sunset, like Wes said. And subscribe, review us on iTunes, all that good stuff. Share us with your friends. Tell us what you want us to cover. We'd love to hear from you. Until next week, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.